And this brings me on to the second part of the talk, climate change. The proxy record from the Northern Hemisphere suggests that really for the past couple of thousand years, temperatures were pretty stable, but in the last 50 to 100 years, temperatures have been rising quite quickly. There's a lot of argument about this graph as to whether it's really reflecting real temperatures or it's a figment of scientists' imagination. But the balance of people that work on climate agree that this is a fair representation of what is going on. So what could be causing the climate to change? Well, one possibility is changes to the ocean currents that transport energy around the planet. A small wiggle in one of those currents can change the climate of a region quite significantly. Another change could be a volcanic eruption. A really big volcano puts a lot of material high into the stratosphere, the uppermost part of the atmosphere, where it acts as a mirror to reflect energy to space, and the surface cools. Or it could be the sun. Very clearly we get most of our energy from the sun, and if there are changes on the sun, we can expect a change in the climate. And then there's us. Through industry, through transport, and through agriculture, we're putting other gases into the atmosphere. And these are increasing the amount of carbon dioxide that we see. Today, we're way outside the level of the highest maximum carbon dioxide recorded over 750,000 years. We're currently here. More importantly, carbon dioxide values are rising incredibly quickly. In our historical rate data, it took 1,000 years at the fastest to go up 30 parts per million. We're now doing that in 15 years. We've looked at a couple of environmental indicators, climate change and the ozone hole. But when we're trying to diagnose the health of the planet, we need to look at all the indicators, like a doctor trying to make a diagnosis of their patient. So what other environmental issues might we want to look at? Well, returning to the Antarctic, it was the focus for a major industry, that of whaling. Today, that whaling station is a rusting tourist destination, which is very popular, but there's no whaling carried out. There are no whales to hunt, to speak of, in Antarctica. Another area is the great albatrosses, the wandering albatross, one of the largest of all flying birds. Their numbers are dropping quite significantly, largely due to our activities with unlicensed fishing, where the albatross takes a baited hook and is dragged underneath and drowns. Closer to home in the North Sea, the cod fishery is declining quite dramatically. But despite being what the scientists regard as being the red zone where catches should be prohibited, the EU ministers allowed a catch of 29,000 tonnes last year. Another issue which I think is beginning to bite at the moment is water supply. Here in the UK, we're generally well blessed with water, but we're in a bit of a drought, and some places are contemplating a hosepipe ban. But other countries, for example Yemen, are using water at a rate that is faster than it is falling upon their country. They're using ancient water from underground aquifers. And I always say we can link all of those symptoms together and say that today we are using the resources of our planet at a rate which requires more than one. Now you can do that for a short time, but you can't continue for a long time. And I link it to our population, whether it's here in England or globally, and the key problem is that population. So what can we do? We can try and balance things out by reducing our consumption, but in the UK we are using those resources at a rate that requires 3 planets. We can keep doing it for a short while. Alternatively, we can cut the number of consumers. That's a rather draconian suggestion, that 2/3 of you have to go. No, that isn't going to work either. So what can we do? I strongly advocate education, particularly for the developing part of the world, and in very great particular nature, the female population of the developing world. Because at the moment, very often, the female populace doesn't get a choice over what they do. If we don't, Easter Island perhaps gives us a message. One interpretation is that this is the forlorn remnant of a civilization that used all its resources and left behind these statues gazing out into the sea. There are other interpretations. But this picture also gives us hope for the future, in that despite the civilization having gone, there are still living things here. And I think that is where I'll conclude on that message of hope.